Some years ago, my son cut down a little scrub wild olive tree that was growing on the farm here. It had been here for, well, we've been here 21 years, and it was the same size 21 years ago. Anyway, he cut it down, we split the log in two and waxed the ends, and this is roughly how it ended up. It's been drying for a few years just inside the house. Anyway, I thought it didn't look like much, but I milled it down anyway. And I came up with two fretboards, two wild African olive fretboards. That's Olea europea subspecies africana. And I think they're just going to look absolutely magnificent. They've got a superb grain. I'm just so excited about these. What I have here now is my fretboard radiusing jig. I've removed all the shims that I put in last year under the rails. Where's the rails there? To give me a two-way composite radius. So now I'm just having a single radius. I've got the router set up on a sled that moves forward and back. And this is what gives you the radius. This, heaven knows what it's called. I've set up both sides at 14 inches, so I'm not doing a composite radius, I'm not doing a two-way radius, nothing. Just a straight 14-inch radius on this lovely olive wood fretboard. At present the fretboard is 7 millimeters thick, and when I finished I want it 5.5 millimeters in the middle, so 5.5 millimeters in the middle. So there we have a nicely radiused fretboard of olive wood. Just requires a bit of sanding to get it up to scratch. Right, I've made myself a jig of sorts to change my crosscut thingy here, whatever this is called, to 90 degrees. Or 180 degrees with the blade, which means I can then adjust it back by 12.5 degrees to get the angle that I need for the scarf joint. And yes, that cut surface is at 90 degrees to the base of the saw. So at the moment it's sitting on 45 degrees. If I adjust it back by 10, 11, 12.5 degrees and put this piece of wood there, maybe I'll clamp it in place, then when I add my neck to that, I will get my 12.5 degrees that I need. So I've super glued the neck to the 90-degree jig, or whatever you would call it, super glue and masking tape to hold it in place, and I've adjusted the angle back to 12.5 degrees. Unfortunately, my saw won't cut all the way through in one go, so I'm going to have to cut it 2/3 of the way through, and then, I don't know, maybe the last bit by hand, or I'll see if I can flip it around or something. Anyway, here we go. Well, it's not too bad. I was hoping for a better result than that. I'll just have to see what we can do. Well, I guess that joint is okay. 2mm toothpick, 2mm drill bit. have it fairly well aligned with the toothpicks. At the back, where you will see the maple strip, it is pretty well aligned. That's there. And the toothpicks, of course, will be hidden by the fretboard. I cut a piece of plywood to the same 12.5 degrees to use as a clamping caul. Clamping caul covered in cling film. Because I once had a clamp stuck to a guitar neck with epoxy. That wasn't fun. So I've got it all clamped up there. And when I stick the veneer on there, it's going to be 14.5 millimeters. Last year I snookered myself when I was making my guitar neck, because I did the scarf joint and then I glued on both wings for the headstock before I had cut the truss rod channel, and so I had no straight edge to run my router along for the truss rod channel. Anyway, this year I caught myself in time, wrote myself a note. This was the shortest truss rod that I could buy, 420 millimeters. Now, I wanted to install it as like I do an electric guitar truss rod, but if I do that, it's going to stick out on the headstock, which I really don't want. That means I'm going to have to install it as a sound hole access truss rod, which I also didn't want to do. Oh well, tough luck. And there we go, now just over 9 millimeters. I did some work on my son's old Ryobi bandsaw. I replaced the tires, put on a new wider blade, did a whole setup, and now, while it's probably still the worst bandsaw in South Africa, it's possibly not the worst in the universe. With that I was able to rough out the headstock and the neck, and it's now ready for gluing on the fretboard. For the face of the headstock, I resawed a piece of sapele mahogany and book matched it as best as possible. I think that's quite nice. So here you can see I have glued maple on the back of the sapele, and I've marked out the shape of the headstock on it. Then on a bandsaw I roughly cut it to shape, and then I glued it onto the front of the headstock. Then I neatened it up with a router with a flush trim bit. Then I changed bits to this utterly awesome chamfer bit that I won last year as a spot prize from Radian Tools, which gives this lovely effect of a sapele headstock framed with maple. I've started shaping a volute, and I'm gluing scrap sapele as the neck heel.